If you've been following our dives, you know we've spent a bit of time in the emerging world of spirits where all these cool new distilleries are popping up.
Yeah, and some really unexpected places.
Exactly. But today, we're kind of hitting the reset button. We are heading straight for Scotland, the, undisputed heavyweight champion of the spirits world.
Home to centuries of tradition. And we're going way, way up north, right to the extreme edge of that tradition, to the windswept Orkney Islands.
We're doing a deep dive into one of the most respected names in the game, Highland Park.
Right, and this place, it boasts over 220 years of experience. We're talking all the way back to 1798.
But what makes this so interesting, I think, is the blend of that really ancient history with a very modern figure who guides their story now, Martin Markvatsen.
The global brand ambassador. He's been in the industry for 35 years, and, well, people have called him the most Scottish Dane alive.
It's a great title, and it really is a story of contrast. I mean, the range Highland Park has is just massive.
It really is. You, the listener, you can go into a supermarket and pick up their 12-year-old for, what, 60, 70 bucks? Super accessible.
Right.
But then they also produce some of the rarest, most expensive aged whiskeys in the world.
So our mission today is pretty specific. First, we're going to dig into the terroir, that unique Orkney location, and figure out what gives Highland Park that unmistakable sweetness.
And second, we're tracing the path of Martin Markvatsen. It's this amazing accidental journey from the military police all the way to, well, whiskey royalty.
Okay, let's get into it. The history, the flavor, the journey.
Let's start with that isolation and the origin story. 1798, it's a great myth, but like all good myths, it needs a little bit of clarifying.
Right. The founder, Magnus Jensen. The story goes he was a smuggler priest hiding booze under the pulpit.
That's the story. But the sources are clear. He was actually a church officer. A kirketjener, as they'd say in Denmark. More like the custodian or the sexton.
Still hiding whiskey under the pulpit. That's a good story.
It's great marketing, whether it was on purpose or not.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the real key. Orkney is so remote.
Just how remote are we talking?
You're looking at the same latitude as the southern tip of Greenland. It is genuinely tough to get to. You'd either fly or you take a long ferry.
And the flying is tricky. The sources mention the wind just constantly blowing in from the Atlantic. From Canada, even?
Oh, it's intense. So intense that historically, about 1 in every 3 flights gets canceled.
1 in 3. Wow.
Yeah. That tells you everything about the environment that's shaping this spirit. It's true isolation.
So what's the demographic context of that isolation?
It's wild.
Yeah.
Orkney is 70 islands, but the sources say only about 21 and a half are inhabited.
Wait. 21 and a half?
Yeah, the half island is this one island where only one guy lives, and he's apparently off shopping for months at a time.
That's amazing.
The total population for the whole archipelago is just under 23,000 people.
And what grows there is, as we'll find out, absolutely central to the flavor.
Very little. I mean, very few trees can survive those winds. And that fact is, well, it's the key to everything we're about to talk about with the flavor. This is truly windblown whiskey.
Okay, so that's the geography. Let's pivot to the man himself, Martin Markvatsen. How on earth does a guy from Falster in Denmark get on the radar of this ancient Scottish distillery?
His career started about as far away as you can get from whiskey. He was in the Naval Military Police.
Okay, so not exactly a direct path.
Not at all. The turning point, he says, came about 36 years ago. He was in Edinburgh for a 14-day military exercise.
And what happened?
Well, his colleagues, they get a day off, and they do what you'd expect. They go on a big Edinburgh pub crawl.
Nice sense.
But Martin, he rents a car, he just drives out into the countryside, and he ends up at Glenkinchie Distillery.
Yeah.
And he was just hooked.
Yeah.
By the spirit, the process, the pride of the workers.
But 35 years ago, especially in Denmark, it wasn't like you could just Google how to make whiskey.
Exactly. Information was scarce. So if he wanted to learn, he had to go back. And this is where his dedication really shines. He started using all of his vacation time to fly back to Scotland.
And he worked for free, right? Just to learn.
For free, for up to 2 weeks at a time, just rolling barrels, sweeping floors, whatever they'd let him do.
You could never do that now. Health and safety would have a field day.
Absolutely not. But he was just soaking it all up. He started giving lectures on whiskey back home 35 years ago, way before it was this huge global thing.
So that hands-on knowledge gave him a real edge. He eventually moved up, worked as a purchaser at an airport, then started a whiskey department in a wine warehouse.
Correct. And his path eventually led him to move to Scotland full-time. He became the manager of the Cragganmore Hotel, which was the biggest whiskey hotel in Europe. And crucially, it was right across the road from Macallan,
And Macallan is owned by Edrington.
the same company that owns Highland Park. And they would have staff meetings at his hotel all the time.
Ah, okay. I see where this is going.
So every time they came, Martin would give these professional presentations. He'd pick 6 whiskeys. And no matter who the audience was, Highland Park 18-year-old was always in the lineup. It was his personal favorite.
His passion for that one bottle must have been pretty obvious.
It was more than obvious. It was genuine, deep knowledge. So eventually, Edrington approaches him. They offer him the ambassadorship. And he doesn't ask about salary or vacation or anything like that.
He had one question.
Just one. He looked at them and asked, "Can I work with Highland Park 18?"
And they said yes.
They said yes, and he took the job on the spot. That story tells you everything. And his role isn't just promotional. He's in the labs in Glasgow, working with the blending team, picking single casks. He's completely involved.
What a journey. Okay, so let's talk about the flavor, the thing he loves. Why is Highland Park so unmistakably sweet compared to, say, its cousins over on Islay with all that heavy medicinal smoke?
The sweetness comes 100% from the Orkney peat. That's the whole story.
Okay, so peat is just decayed plants, right? When you burn it, you get phenols, you get smoke. So what's the chemical difference here?
This is the real aha moment.
Yeah.
If you look at Islay peat, it's really high in a compound called guaiacol phenols, about 75% more than Orkney peat.
Guaiacol. And what does that do?
Guaiacol comes from the breakdown of lignin. Lignin is the stuff that makes wood woody and tough. So when you burn peat with lots of decayed wood in it, you get that classic spicy, terry, almost iodine flavor. Think creosote.
So Islay peat has more wood in it, but Orkney doesn't have any trees.
Exactly. So what does its peat have? It's got 3 times more carbohydrate phenols,
And that comes from...
the local plants, mostly heather and grass. Because there's no complex wood lignin, the smoke compounds are chemically closer to sugars. You get this beautiful, sweet, heathery smoke, not an antiseptic blast.
That makes perfect sense. Sweet smoke, not medicinal smoke. And they actually proved this by accident, right?
They did. About 22 years ago, they tried to cut a corner. They stopped floor malting for a bit and brought in peat from other places, like Black Isle and Tomatul.
And what happened to the whiskey?
It changed completely. It immediately got that iodine note they try so hard to avoid.
Because that other peat had more wood in it, more guaiacol.
Precisely. They had to switch back immediately. It was proof that the Orkney terroir is non-negotiable for their spirit, and they still do about 20% of their own floor malting today to keep that tradition alive.
An amazing story. Okay, let's talk about the products, because they managed to have this incredible range.
It is vast. On one end, you have the 12-year-old, and here's a great little fact. When that was first launched back in 1977,
Yeah.
the whiskey in those bottles was actually aged up to 25 or 26 years.
You're kidding. Why would they put 25-year-old whiskey in a 12-year-old bottle?
They just didn't have any younger stock. That was
Yeah.
the youngest stuff they had on hand. Can you imagine finding one of those bottles today?
Incredible. And what about the other extreme? The really high-end stuff?
The oldest they've ever sold was a 56-year-old. It went for the equivalent of nearly $60,000.
Wow.
And Martin, the ambassador, his biggest regret is missing a tasting of an 1898 vintage because of COVID quarantine rules. He just couldn't travel.
No, that would haunt you. Speaking of tasting, let's talk about adding water. People always say to add a drop or two. What's the professional take?
That's a great question. The idea is that a few drops of water can help bring the phenols and other compounds to the surface so you get more on the nose.
Right.
For his own enjoyment, Martin usually drinks it at cask strength. But for professional tasting, for taking notes, he does something extreme.
How extreme?
He dilutes it all the way down to 20% alcohol.
20%. That's like mostly water.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
But at that low proof, the alcohol burn is gone. And he can pick up every single subtle note from the wood and the peat. It's purely for analysis.
But I guess the old saying is true. Whiskey doesn't always get better with age, it just gets more expensive.
That is a 100% verifiable fact. But they are still innovating, even at the premium end. Look at between you and I, 16-year-old.
Yeah, this is their first time using Swedish oak, right? Which sounds really unusual for Scotch.
Very unconventional. It's virgin Swedish oak. European oak, but from a really cold climate, so the grain is super tight, super compact. They used it for bourbon first, then finished the Scotch in it.
What was the result?
Surprisingly, it gave these beautiful vanilla notes, almost like American oak.
Mm-hmm.
But the really innovative part was the collaboration.
Right, with the chef, Bjorn Franzen, the only chef with 3 3 Michelin star restaurants.
And Franzen just threw out all the typical tasting notes. Hints of citrus, a touch of nutmeg, all gone.
Instead, he used feelings and memories. What does that even look like on a bottle? Tastes like a walk in the woods.
It's pretty much that. They framed it all around the emotion the whiskey evokes. They even had a slogan, "What do you taste?" As in, what country, what color, what piece of music does this make you think of? It just totally changes the conversation.
It really does. Okay, so let's quickly contrast the 2 main bottles that were tasted in the source material. The 12-year-old versus the 25.
Sure, the 12-year-old, it's at 40%, very light in color. You get that lovely sweet nose, good malt flavors, fantastic value. But the finish is a bit short. It scored a solid 85, 86 out of 100.
And the 25-year-old.
That's a big step up. It's at 46%, much darker. The smoke is so soft and harmonious. You get great length, real complexity. It's just a fantastic experience, rated a 90 out of 100.
And tasting those really old whiskeys like a 1922 vintage, you're not just tasting the spirit, you're tasting history.
Absolutely. You're tasting a time before the 1823 Excise Act, before everything was so regulated. Back then, they just threw peat in the kiln until it looked like too much smoke was coming out. There was no real process control.
So to wrap up our deep dive, we've gone to the remote Orkney Islands and learned that the local peat, which is full of heather and grass, is the key to that signature sweetness. It's all about carbohydrate phenols, not guaiacol.
And we followed Martin Markvatsen's journey, a story of pure passion. It shows how a brand can straddle that line between an affordable everyday dram and these ultra-premium collector's bottles, all driven by this powerful sense of place.
And that brings us to our final thought. We mentioned the 1823 Excise Act in Scotland. It brought in formal rules for everything, from the stills to the paperwork. Before that, a lot of production was illegal and totally unregulated. So for you to think about, how much of the traditional Scotch whiskey that we know today is actually a direct result of tax laws and regulations rather than some purely organic ancient tradition? It's something to mull over next time you have a dram of this windblown spirit.